Hello all, welcome back to Be a Creative. Today I'm going to be making three little insert displays, I don't know what you call them, to fit inside that Tim Holtz Ideology flip frame thing that I've had for forever. It originally comes in silver, but I don't like that, so I just spray painted it white. I'm not a big silver fan, unless it's jewelry on my body. Then I'm all about that. Anyway, I found some flashcards at the thrift store and was like, lo and behold, they will fit perfectly inside that little flip frame because I didn't have the insert for it, which is why it had been empty for so long. Now the cards are really thin, so I know that I can't do a lot of layers, and I'm definitely going to need to get some type of protection down. I start by laying down some gesso, and I'm just using a brayer to apply it quickly. I did that on all three of the flashcards, though I'm only showing you one. Now, once that's good and dry, I'm going to start by making my first little display, I don't know, journal page, whatever you want to call it. I thought I would use the brayer just like I did with the gesso, but I don't know, I wasn't really getting the type of coverage that I'd hoped for, so as per usual, I went in with my finger. And I'm just laying down some Dina Wakley paint. I believe that is Sky. I'll have a full list of all the products used in the description below. There's really no rhyme or reason to this. I was just kind of doing what felt good and was playing. I decided to add some washi tape for a little bit of texture because I didn't really feel like pulling out all my stamps and adding whole bunches of crazy layers and stuff, and I knew that you weren't really going to be able to see much of the background because of the quotes that I picked. I am kind of laying the washi tape over top of each other just to create some type of cohesiveness, so it doesn't look like I randomly stuck down washi tape. And now I'm adding a little bit of carnation just for some contrast. I'm using a makeup sponge with this, and that's one that I get from Target. Let me tell you guys, those things are super absorbent. Like, they eat my paint, so I can only imagine how much foundation I use when I use those. Like, it just soaks it up like a sponge, which, I mean, that's what it is. So it had one job, and you know what? It's doing it effectively. So those are the same mask that I used last week. They were still on my desk. Don't ask why. And I decided to use them again. I'm going to add some Dina Wakley gloss spray over the top in white and eventually in lemon. That little mask is something that I designed and cut on the Cricut because I wanted some wonky circles, and if I can't find the type of stencil that I want, I typically just make it on the Cricut and cut it out of craft cardstock. I added white here thinking that that little touch of yellow at the bottom they would kind of play off each other, and I don't know, I wasn't crazy about it. It was too much lemon, too much yellow with what I had going on. So I just put the mask back down, and I'm going back over top of it with that white. Be sure to smear it a little bit as you pull it off. You know, we don't want things to look like you know what you're doing or perfect. Once that is dry, I am going to, oh, sorry, this is something that I discovered. You can use the mask with the gloss sprays almost like stamps. I hope you guys caught that. That was super quick. Sorry. Once that's dry, I'm trying to kind of clean up some of the washi tape because while the washi will resist the matte acrylic, the gloss spray just covers everything. And you can see I put deli paper down to keep my surface area clean and mess free. Well, to a certain degree. As you can see, I've already gotten quite messy. I did lose just a little bit too much color, so I'm going back in with some of that Sky and Carnation again with my finger and just adding, you know, just little touches of color where I think I want them. Now, what I'm getting ready to do here, this is something that I'll do sometimes if I can't quite figure out where to place something. I'll take the stamp that I'm using, and that's from the Dina Wakley 2020 release. I won it in the Dina Wakley Facebook group. I won their random draw. That was crazy. I was so excited to win that stamp, and I've only used it twice, despite all of my excitement. It's intimidated me a little bit, and that's why it hasn't been popping up in my artwork. So I'm stamping directly onto some deli paper, and like I said, this is what I'll do to kind of audition where I want to place a stamp if I'm not like fully committed to where I want it. And it also allows me to have like a little piece of collage for future projects. So it's a win-win, I believe. So the quote itself says, "We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are." And that's why I just wanted the eyes down, and I used the deli paper trick. So I'm just inking the edges with some VersaFine pigment, and now I'm just going to glue down the quote itself. The quote is by Anise Nin, and I'm sure I just butchered the name, but I'm kind of like, I don't want to say snobby about quotes. I'm really only snobby about coffee, if that, I mean, but it's coffee, you know, like who's not? Like, I remember my husband, while we were dating, he gave me a cup of that Kobe Luwak coffee, the tiger poop coffee. It was amazing, and it forever ruined me. I remember thinking, self, marry the man who can keep you in tiger poop coffee your whole life. I was right. I have not been disappointed. And while we have not been kept in tiger poop coffee, I can say that I've never had a bad cup of coffee since I married that man. Anyway, I'm much the same about quotes. I really only pick quotes that have significantly impacted my life. Like, I'll read it and it'll make me look at the world differently, or I'll have like one of those aha moments. And the quotes that I picked for this particular little project that I did for myself, those are all of those types of things. I had like an aha moment when I read it. For the second little display, I decided that I wanted to do some collaging and keep it very simple, because this quote is actually pretty long, and I knew that it didn't really matter what I put on the background because you weren't really going to be able to see it. So I have some torn up pieces of paper that I've been gel printing on, and that's actually deli paper that I've been spraying the Dina Wakley gloss sprays on and just letting dry. It creates this really great texture on the deli paper. It's almost like glassine, I think that's what it's called, and I just really like it. It's wonderful. It's not, you know, it's kind of transparent, but not completely, so you can still see the texture and stuff. And I'm just gluing that right over top of those other little torn pieces of Dell printed. You may notice that the one on the right in the green is from last week's play session on the gel plate. See, look at me using my stuff. The quote that I'm putting down here is by Fritz Perls, who is the father of Gestalt therapy, and it's probably my favorite quote. At the risk of this sounding like an unsanctioned TED Talk, I'm going to read it to you. "Our dependency makes slaves out of us, especially if this dependency is a dependency of our self-esteem. If you need encouragement, praise, pats on the back from everybody, then you make everybody your judge." That quote, the first time I read it, it literally changed my life. I was like, Fritz Perls, you're a genius. This last one, I almost didn't add this to the video, but I wanted to show you guys that I'm more than just a one-trick pony. I can do stuff other than just Dina Wakley. Yeah, look at me. I'm doing some a Tim Holtz themed display. I have some of his distressed oxides, and I've just sprayed them down on my mat, and what I'm doing is, I think it's called the smushing technique. I don't know. I just smush it against some watered down of distress sprays that he has. And I'm doing this in layers. I'm drying between each layer, and I probably did it a good 4 or 5 times until I got like the color build up the way that I wanted it. That's his new professor. The stamp is huge, and those are his new field note stamps. And I thought that, well, since I don't really want to add like a whole bunch of layers and stuff to this particular one, I'll do a little bit of stamping. I'm stamping directly onto the background with some of his distress inks, and I believe that that is Vintage Photo. I think that's the name of it, Vintage Photo. And I'll put the colors below in the description box that I used if you're interested in replicating this, which I hope you are. I hope that you will replicate. Like, I would, that, I don't know. I think imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but that's just me. If you do create something, tag me on Instagram, which I hope you're following me there anyway, because I post like almost every day, and there's less talking, if that, you know, if that's something you would appreciate. Anyway, I'm just building up layers with the stamps using all in the same color, because the professor is actually going to take up most of this little journaling display thing that we've got. I did dry that just very quickly, and now I'm taking a wet baby wipe and very lightly going over top of the stamping just so I can smear it just a little bit. I just didn't want something quite so crisp. Now I have some Distress Oxide inks in frayed burlap, and I'm just inking the edges. I was thinking in my head this would look different. It got a little too grungy, and I like grunge, but I like a particular level of grunge, if that makes sense. That was a little bit too much for me. So I'm going back in with my my miracle color, which is brushed corduroy. I love that color. That's my favorite out of his entire line. And it typically does exactly what I need it to, like it brightens things up, but over that frayed burlap, it still just was a little, I don't know, it just wasn't as bright as I wanted it. But that's okay, because I'm going to fix it here in a minute. So because the Professor stamp is so large, I did use my stamping platform to make sure I had like a nice, good stamped impression, and it worked. It did its job too. It's nice when your craft supplies do what they're supposed to do. I really appreciate that. So now this is how I fix that. I'm inking the edges with a little bit of fossilized amber, and this did what I was hoping the brushed corduroy would do. Way to let me down, brushed corduroy. And it was perfect. At least I thought it was. Especially down at the bottom where the ink kind of goes up into those little holes in his body. I don't know. I just really like that. So now I'm adding some washi tape. And this was just washi tape I had laid on my desk. There was no deliberate selection. I was just being lazy. Didn't feel like hunting for anything. And I'm going to add the sentiment. Now the sentiment for this is actually just the name of the quote. It's called The Man in the Arena, and I first read it in a book by Brene Brown. If you're not familiar with Brene Brown, she's the shame and vulnerability lady. And if you are a creative type, which I'm assuming you are because you're watching videos like this, I would strongly encourage you to pick up one of her books. There is so much vulnerability in art, especially when we share it on Instagram or YouTube. And that quote, she writes about the impact it had on her at a really vulnerable time in her life. And when I read it, I felt much the same. So that's why it made the cut. Made the cut to impactful quotes that I made for my little display. So once I have my washi tape down and placed, I just went over the quote with a little bit of that brushed or frayed burlap, so it's not quite so stark white. And we can see the finished products. There's the Fritz Perls quote. That's my personal favorite. There's the Man in the Arena. I just felt like the Professor went really well with that. And that's the Anise Nin quote that I just butchered the name, I'm sure. Here they are in the little display so that I can flip them. So that way, as I go throughout my day, I can flip to the quote that maybe I need to be reminded of to help me with whatever situation I am going through. There's the last one. I think that's the prettiest background. I don't know. Let me know what you think. All right, guys. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.